I Redditor.
Which occupations are filled with people who have the worst personality?
I used to work in events, and we hired our spaces to people from many industries. By far the worst clients were from fashion, wanted everything immediately with massive discounts, and they were extremely demanding. A very, don't you know who I am kind of attitude. I understand that to get into that industry, you essentially have to work for free for several years, so only trust fund kids make it.
When I worked in IT for a school district, I had a teacher at one of my assigned schools who worked in the fashion industry previously in California and had relocated to Tennessee. He'd put in work order tickets and be upset when I wasn't able to resolve his issues as soon as he liked. I had to sit him down and explain to him nicely that this was a completely different field, and the world as well as my work didn't revolve around him and his demands. He seemed to get the message and said he was trying to break the habit, but it was going to be an adjustment. I told him if he continued to be patient with me, then I'd continue to be patient with him.
At least he was self-aware and admit it. That's a rare case, and I'd probably throw the guy a bone of some kind, because most people like this are just intolerable and refuse to acknowledge it.
I used to work at a luxury car dealership, and I came in to say this. Successful fashion designers and executives are absolute Karens. They think their shit don't stink and have the worst kind of ego I've ever seen. Doctors were my favorite. The richest of the rich, billionaires, were surprisingly tame for the most part. They have a skewed view of the world, however. They are way too insulated from the world to understand what is really going on in a let-them-eat-cake kind of way. But they're too preoccupied with other stuff to care about a delayed delivery or something like that.
I'm in IT. Some of the most pain-in-the-ass frequent flyers are doctors, lawyers, and engineers. Caveat: less on the civil or mechanical engineering. Those folks tend to be down to earth. They tend to be smart and stupid. Edit: I'm not trying to insult here, but rather demonstrate that their eggs are typically in mostly one basket. But they see themselves as only smart. Yes, you are, but typically only in that one field. Let me help you with the field in which I'm trained, because I sure as shit ain't doctoring, lawyering, or engineering.
My fiance was in high-end fashion retailing for a while. It messed her up something good. Our outlooks on work and what is acceptable workplace behavior from a superior are entirely different. She's been in liquor advertising for several years now, and she's just now starting to realize how messed up it was working in fashion. We have had regular conversations where she says, "That's just how it is." And I would say, "Bullshit. That's exploitative and you should say no. If they don't respect you, you shouldn't respect them." And I worked in sports, where you also get paid peanuts, work crazy hours, and are taken advantage of regularly.
I got halfway through a fashion design degree before bailing. A requirement for graduating is that you spend a semester in NYC and do an unpaid internship, in addition to an unmanageable course load. All-nighters were way too common, and a professor told me that they have at least one person faint from exhaustion per semester. I was unfortunately that person once, and she said it like it was just a funny quirk of that major, just one of those things that happens.
Investment banking, in particular the successful types, can be difficult.
Worked in support roles in investment banking for 20 plus years. One story will suffice. I got a call from a banker who asked me to come into the office on a day when the entire city was shut down because of the Rodney King riots. I refused, and then I called everyone on my crew and ordered them to also refuse if and when he should call them. He did call them, every single one.
I've worked a lot as a software engineer, developing and supporting products used by large banks. There is this. I'm going to test my own influence by throwing my weight around and asking for everything under the sun, to the point where I tire everyone else out, and they lose the willingness or ability to say no and push back. So annoying and toxic. Just reaching out everywhere looking for a weak point, someone they can exploit and leverage without any regard for professional courtesy, social convention, or good faith negotiation.
Politics. It's like a magnet for power-hungry egos. Backstabbing schemers. Can't trust half of them as far as you can throw them.
The Douglas Adams observation will stand the test of eternity. The major problem, one of the major problems, for there are several, one of the many major problems with governing people is that of whom you get to do it, or rather of who manages to get people to let them do it to them. To summarize, it is a well-known fact that those people who must want to rule people are, ipso facto, those least suited to do it. To summarize the summary, anyone who is capable of getting themselves made president should, on no account, be allowed to do the job.
Administrators in public schools. Ask some teachers you know. Edit: wow. I did not expect so many to agree with me.
My dad is a teacher who is thankfully about to retire. 40 years as a teacher. The bullshit he has been put through by the administration is absolutely unreal. And my dad, God love him, is a peaceful man and a good teacher who actually cares about his students, and he has taken it in the ass from them for 40 years. Absolutely absurd.
Same here. My mom is about to retire as a public elementary school teacher after 35 years. She loved the kids and had a great record, won a number of teaching awards, etc. But that never stopped the administration from trying to screw her every chance they got, and in her opinion, it's only getting worse for the next generation of teachers.
My husband had an admin who stood in front of a staff meeting and told everyone that he could do every single person's job in the room and that they weren't special. Everyone. My husband teaches instrumental music. Husband challenged him, and that fuck had the audacity to say that he could do my husband's job because he played clarinet in elementary school. My husband called the union. The guy got removed from the school at the end of the year. There were multiple bullying complaints. And guess where they put him? Why, hiring other administrators, of course.
Good on your husband for calling him out, though. Some people need to be knocked down a notch. I work in education, and I know how these big fish in little ponds think they're great whites.
Corporate execs have the highest rate of psychopathy.
Yup, CEOs, financiers, lawyers, and sociopaths excel in those jobs because they often lack empathy and don't feel bad about screwing other people over. Edit to say, I was not implying that all CEOs, financiers, or lawyers are sociopaths, but that you have a higher likelihood of encountering a sociopath in those fields versus others.
Reminds me of that one researcher who was studying psychopathy and found out his brain was off the charts.
Construction can get pretty bad. Bosses never took a management class. Everybody's miserable. Grown men fighting like schoolgirls.
The most interesting night I've ever had doing manual labor was watching two guys fight while wielding nail guns. Seeing them swing around trying to decide if they wanted to use their free hand to punch or hold the safety back on their nail guns was both highly entertaining and incredibly scary.
If they haven't disabled the safety with baling wire, they aren't real construction workers.
I'm a civil engineer, but spent a good amount of time as an inspector on construction jobs. You'll never see more blatant sexism, racism, and absolutely unnecessary yelling and drama over the littlest things than on a construction site, in my opinion.
I was staking a house next to one being framed and heard a guy yelling at a new guy that the cut was wrong and it was coming out of his check. Back and forth arguing for an hour until the new guy peeled out and the framers were like, I was just joking with him.
And the just a prank bro guy will tell the story to management to show how the new guy can't handle a little ribbing and is too sensitive.
Particularly, the sort of middle management in construction are some of the worst human beings alive. Them and the guys who own little companies where it's like one crew of guys who lay concrete and the foreman boss owns the company. A lot of those fuckers would have ran a gas chamber with a smile on their face. Those two types of people have been the most likely to say, nobody wants to work anymore, as well in my experience. Yeah, nobody wants to work for you because you're paying $12 per hour for roofing and want people to work 6-7 days a week for 14-16 hours a day.
People in positions of minimal power, i.e., jobs that require little education aren't paid well, but give just enough power over people to potentially ruin their day. Airport security, parking attendant, mall security, and ticket inspectors. All professions filled with frustrated souls who take out their frustrations on others.
When I was a kid, such a person was awful to me in public. I was really upset about it. My dad took me aside and said, people like them have so little power in their lives, so they use that power over other people to make themselves feel better. I've had to recall that lesson many times.
I used to work for a social service agency, and I was shocked by how nasty my coworkers were. The work culture was plain mean.
I was involved with a suicide prevention committee, and I was sort of dismissed and talked down to because I had attempted before, and at one point I was made fun of for crying during a meeting after another committee member said something like, "Those people are screwed up." The comments about the adults didn't faze me so much, but the comments about kids did, because at that age I thought that adults knew everything, and I also felt isolated and didn't know anyone else who was dealing with that. I'm now doing inner child work and have a support system to deal with it.